Afternoon, everyone. Today we have with us Dr. Kunal Gupta. As we all know, Dr. Kunal Gupta is a practitioner. He is an exclusive pediatric dental practitioner and an academician with the specialization in pediatric and preventive dentistry. He did his graduation from Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences and done post-graduation from Manipal University. He has trained with the summer school at University of Washington at dental clinical research methods in 2005. He is also recipient of the of Colgate Bright Smile Bright Future Award at IAPD Congress in 2003. He established technologically advanced pediatric dental center called Children's Dental Center, Gurugram, Haryana, as a branch of Seoul's Children's Dental Center. He started practicing nitrous oxide at his clinic in 2011. Since 2011, he uses nitrous oxide routinely for all his patients. He is also a writer, author of book titled Nitrous Oxide in Pediatric Dentistry, a clinical handbook. He is a gem of person. He is a good friend of mine. Today, he is enlightening us about the nitrous oxide. Over to Dr. Kunal.
Thank you, Dr. Ganin. Thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction. Thank you, participants, for being here and for showing your eagerness to listen to me. So we'll begin with our presentation now. So to begin with, I would like to outline the main objectives of this webinar. So the main objectives would be, why do we need nitrous oxide? Because most of us feel that, okay, nitrous oxide has to be used for uncooperative patients. It has to be used selectively only for few patients. But my perception is a little different. I feel nitrous oxide is a part and parcel of our practice, of our daily practice. So we cannot restrict its use to only few patients, rather than we should generalize its use to all our patients. Second point which I'm going to cover is nitrous oxide safe? And it's a very important thing which I feel it should be discussed over here, because most of us either we feel or we are misguided by our colleagues from other specialties that nitrous oxide is not a safe practice to be incorporated in our clinical practices. So why nitrous oxide is safe at the hand of dentists is what I'm going to discuss over here. Then the third thing which I would like to emphasize on is, how do we administer it effectively? Because again, there is a lot of misconception that nitrous oxide doesn't work very well for all our patients. So how to make use effectively for most of our patients is what I'm going to discuss. And then what do we need to look for certain signs and symptoms during its administration, so that we practice this technique effectively and efficiently. So moving on forward, being periodontists, what is expected from us? I think most of us will be knowing the answer. That is, being periodontists, thing which differentiates us from other specialists is our behavior management skills. So what is behavior management? Behavior management is the means by which dental health team effectively and efficiently performs treatment for a child to instill a positive dental attitude. So I have highlighted 3 keywords here, that is effectively, efficiently, and a positive dental attitude. Now, okay, most of us or many of us may feel that, okay, we can perform our procedures on our child patients using non-pharmacological behavior management techniques. But where are we lacking in that? The thing which we lack over when we make use of non-pharmacological techniques is the efficiency. Because we are lacking in efficiency, we may take more amount of time to finish the procedure, or we get fatigued, we get tired, we are not able to do more number of patients, we may get irritated by the end of the day. So this is one thing which will help us in differentiating pharmacological technique with this non-pharmacological technique with this particular technique. So what are the objectives of using nitrous oxide? Whenever we perform any technique in our practice, it's very important we should understand what do we want to achieve by that technique. Unless until we are clear on that, we will not be confident about using it. And even if we discuss about that technique with our fellow colleagues or friends, we won't be able to emphasize its importance. So we should be very clear about why do we want to use and what will we eventually achieve using this technique. So the first objective is to reduce dental fear and anxiety, because this nitrous oxide has a property of being anxiolytic. It also creates euphoria, so it helps in reducing that those anxious moments in our child patients. So it's not only talking about children, it's also about parents, because most of the parents have become overprotective. They are quite sensitive about their child's needs, their sufferings. So the children, it's very important to involve parents in this and during our treatment, and make them feel comfortable, make them realize that okay, that a child is undergoing dental treatment without any suffering, without any pain, without any anxiety. So that will help in building that confidence in our parents. Because what happens actually, whenever parents are walking into a practice, they themselves are so anxious. They would be talking to their friends, oh, today I'm going taking my child to the dentist. Then the friend would say, oh, you're taking to the dentist will do a root canal and thing, so on and so forth. So that entire conversation, the way we are interacting, where we are moving, where we are planning a day, all that inculcates anxiety in the child. So that anxiety is being transferred by parents to their children. So if we create an environment where parents also feel that yeah, their child is undergoing a dental treatment without any problem, their confidence develops, and therefore it helps in overall a good experience for the child and the parents. Second important objective is it enhances communication and child cooperation. What do I mean by this is, whenever a child walks into a practice, the child may be anxious, and if we want to know why the child is anxious, he may not communicate with us because he's fearful. If we ask them, okay, what happened, why aren't you talking to me, okay, or if we ask them some questions, they may not be willing to answer back because of that anxiety. So once that anxiety is reduced, we can communicate, we can also understand what they're scared of, remove those anxiety provoking stimuli, so that to create an environment which is more friendly and more positive for the child. Third important thing is it prevents untoward movement during a dental treatment. So there is we can practice efficiently, we can reduce any chances of injury to the child. It enhances our work and improves the quality of our work. Now this is just a small video clip which I'll play here. So what did we see here? So we were doing just a very simple procedure of oral prophylaxis and fluoride application, but the child was not comfortable. Now, when the child is not comfortable getting a simple procedure done, do you think the parent is going to bring back the child to us for other preventive measures? No, because they feel, okay, my child is fine. Why do we want to take the child to the dentist? The child will be uncomfortable. So by making use of nitrous oxide, we can make that entire experience very pleasant, very positive for the child as well as the parent. And the parents will always be willing to come back to us for other treatment rather than just attending to chief complaint. Now, the next important objective is we'll be able to practice coordinated dentistry. That means it increases our efficiency, it helps in reducing gag reflex, and it helps in building trust and faith in the child. Therefore, the child looks forward towards coming back to the dental treatment. And to summarize all this, it helps in creating a better life for a pediatric dentist. Because if you're dealing with children who are crying, who are throwing tantrums, our fatigue level is so high that we are not able to see more than 4 to 5 patients in a day. We get so tired by the end of after we've seen 4 or 5 patients. But with this, it increases our efficiency. We do more amount of work, more number of patients in a particular day, thereby making our lives much better. So coming on to that first question, that is, do we need nitrous oxide? Or why is nitrous oxide important for our practices? So the message which we need to understand over is definitely nitrous oxide is an integral part of our daily practice. I always say that nitrous oxide is like the backbone of pediatric dentistry. We should not feel that, okay, it's a pharmacological behavior management technique. It's not sedation as such. It is basically help in guiding the behavior of the child. It is for a better life for us, as well as for our child patients. So then few of you may ask me, okay, then why do I need to use this technique for patients who are cooperative when I can manage those children with basic behavior management techniques? So as I've said, we need to understand the objective of using this technique in each and every patient. What are we looking for by using this technique? So our objective is different in different children. So if you have a child who's absolutely cooperative, fine, the child will cooperate during the treatment. But what we are achieving using this technique is that it increases our efficiency and the quality of treatment which we are able to provide. We are able to practice quadrant dentistry. We are able to reduce the number of visits for the child. So that is the objective of using in a definitely positive child. For a positive child, it helps in improving communication. We are able to communicate with the child and instills a positive dental attitude. That means they look forward towards coming back to us. So parents will be willing to bring back their child to us for the entire for taking care of the complete oral health care. Then for a negative child, it reduces fear and anxiety and increases the ability to accept the dental treatment. So if a child who is very anxious, who would have otherwise, we would have without nitrous oxide, it would have been a challenge to treat those children, then it increases our ability over a period of time. With desensitization, we are able to gain that trust and confidence, and we're able to convert the behavior from negative to a positive behavior. And for definitely negative child, we may be able to reduce chances of general anesthesia or even just delay general anesthesia by doing some emergency treatment. So in each and every child, there is a different objective. Now, if for a negative child, if I feel that, okay, right on the first visit, I can do a quadrant dentistry, no, I am wrong. For a negative child, in the first visit, I need to reduce their fear and anxiety. Second visit, again, do some desensitization. And then I would have been able to modify or guide the behavior of the child from negative to positive. Thereby, I'll be able to practice more, practice or carry on the treatment more effectively. So that's how we have to understand what is the objective of using in each and every child, and that is different. So this is what I was talking about. Interestingly, this is a document from AAPD which talks about behavior guidance, and nitrous oxide has been categorized as a behavior guidance technique, as a basic behavior guidance technique in along with other non-pharmacological behavior management techniques. Whereas other forms of sedation, that is oral sedation, IV sedation, or some physical restraint, they are all categorized as advanced behavior guidance technique. So nitrous oxide is not even considered sedation. It is, our objective is not to sedate the child. Our objective is not to bring about depression of consciousness in a child. Our objective is just to reduce that fear and anxiety, to create an environment which is more positive, more happy for the child, and thereby we are able to work more effectively and make that visit pleasant for a child. So that is what is the objective of using nitrous oxide. So moving on to the second part of our presentation, that is nitrous oxide safe? Okay, so that's a big question which all of us feel, even in our pediatric discussions, we have this topic coming up, is it's not safe. Why? Because nitrous oxide is actually an anesthetic agent. So because being an anesthetic agent, we all feel that, okay, it can bring about some adverse events in our practice. It can bring about general anesthesia or deeply sedate the child, and that's why it's not safe. We are increasing the chances of adverse events. But actually, we need to understand what is the scientific basis of using this particular gas in our practices to bring about anxiolysis. So we have to support our discussion scientifically. So for this, we should understand two important properties of this gas. The first important property is our minimum alveolar concentration. So in layman terms, this basically means how much amount of gas is required to bring about a same state of general anesthesia or a surgical anesthesia. Now, if we see this particular pyramid here, we see that nitrous oxide is at the base of pyramid with minimum alveolar concentration being 104, whereas for other inhalational agents such as halothane, isoflurane, sevoflurane, it is ranging from 0.75 to 1.8. So nitrous oxide is almost, the minimum alveolar concentration is almost 100 times more than other potent inhalational anesthetic agents. So this means that we need more amount of gas to bring about a state of general anesthesia, which is same as halothane, thereby implying that nitrous oxide is a very weak anesthetic agent. So its potency is very low compared to other inhalational agents. So what does it mean? That means it is difficult to produce unconsciousness when patient is allowed to breathe simultaneously through their mouth. That is an open system, which we practice in our dental practices. That means we have a loosely fitting mask over the nose of the child. The child is keeping mouth open. We do put rubber dam to ensure that child keeps breathing through nose, but it is not a closed system. We're not ensuring that only child is only inhaling gas through that particular nasal hood. So thereby there are very remote chances that there will be loss of consciousness. It can only happen if you're completely careless. We just put the nitrous oxide mask on the child and we go away from our practices. We come back after 15-20 minutes and then we may get that unconsciousness. But this can never happen, because when the patient is there in our dental chair, they are conscious initially, they understand what is going on. If they feel that they are getting unconscious, they'll remove the mask. So this is a situation which is actually not practical. Thereby it implies that we'll never be able to achieve that particular state of unconsciousness. Only if we are careless, absolutely careless, we can achieve that. So therefore, use of nitrous oxide gas is quite safe in our practices, because it is a weak inhalational anesthetic agent. It is not potent at all. Second important property is our blood gas partition coefficient. That means how much gas is soluble in a blood vessel. So again, if we compare the inhalational agents, we see that nitrous oxide has blood gas partition coefficient of 0.47, whereas for halothane it is 2.4. That means halothane is highly soluble in a blood vessel. So what does that mean is, moment you start administering halothane, since it is soluble in blood, it takes more amount of time for this gas to get saturated, that amount of saturation to reach between the lung, alveolus and the blood vessel, and only then the gas gets transferred to the central nervous system to bring about its effect. Whereas in nitrous oxide, what is happening? Since the gas is less soluble in our blood vessels, therefore that saturation is reached very quickly, and very soon you start getting those CNS effects or depression of consciousness. So this implies that nitrous oxide's induction or recovery is very quick. Now, how is it useful in our practice, or how does this property make it safe to be used by dentists? Because it implies that the depression of consciousness which is being caused is completely under our control, and that too we can control it very quickly. That means if we feel, okay, the child is going into a state of depression of consciousness, that means the eyelids are gently closing, child appears a little drowsy, what we can do, we can simply reduce the concentration of nitrous oxide gas and the child becomes alert again. So it is completely under our control, and thereby if we use nitrous oxide gas alone without combining it with any other drug, it is very safe to be used in our practices. So my request would be to all the participants here is, if anyone talks about safety of nitrous oxide, please support your statement using these two properties of nitrous oxide. That is higher minimum alveolar concentration, and lower blood gas partition coefficient. So now let's move on to this continuum of sedation. That is what is actually happening when we are administering this gas and what we are trying to achieve. Now with nitrous oxide, we want to achieve the state of minimal sedation. That means it is just a drug-induced state. If you see that block, which is written minimal sedation, it's just a drug-induced state. Now, how is it different from other stages of sedation? For example, moderate sedation. In moderate sedation, we see that it is a drug-induced depression of consciousness. That means in moderate sedation, there will be depression of consciousness. So what happens? Moment we see there is a depression of consciousness, reduce the concentration of nitrous oxide, we get back the child into minimal sedation. Okay, so if we are ensuring we are with the child, we are visually seeing our child patients, we can always, maybe maximum we can go into moderate sedation, but we can always reverse back into minimal sedation. Second thing, responsiveness with our communication with our child patients. A child will be in minimal sedation, child will have a normal response to verbal stimulus, whereas in moderate sedation there is a purposeful response to verbal alone or accompanied by tactile stimulus. Means if you ask the child, how are you doing? Immediately the child responds back. That means the child is in minimal sedation. But when you ask, how are you doing? Maybe the child doesn't respond. How are you doing? The child responds back once you have repeated your verbal stimulus or you have your verbal question. Or maybe if he doesn't respond, you just tap the child gently on the hand or on the shoulder and the child responds. That means the child is in a state of moderate sedation. So if you feel such a thing is happening, again reverse the concentration. So visually seeing the responsiveness of the child, visually seeing the state of depression, these are two main things by which we can always ensure that the child is in minimal sedation, and that is what we want to achieve using nitrous oxide gas in our dental practice. Even if we go into a stage of moderate sedation, we'll be able to bring back the child into minimal sedation, and it can never happen that we make the child go into deep sedation unless we are really careless. If we go through the stages of general anesthesia, this is where we want to achieve, that is stage 1 of general anesthesia, that is can be divided into 3 planes, and plane 2 of stage 1 is what we want to achieve using nitrous oxide gas. So this is a small video which will show us the responsiveness. Okay. Okay. Okay, good boy. Are you watching up, looking up? Atau? Watch TV. Good boy. Don't sleep, Adya. Adya, don't sleep. Don't sleep. Don't sleep. Okay. Don't sleep, huh? Okay. Good girl. So as you saw in the second part of the video, this particular child was having depression of consciousness, and I was able to arouse the child only after repeated tactile stimulus. Okay, so that is what is making the child into a moderate sedation. Okay, so if we feel that the eyelids are closing down, there is the child is getting depressed consciously, we ask the child, are you okay? If the child immediately opens his eyes and says, yeah, I'm fine, that means you're proceeding towards moderate sedation, because the response was immediate. But there could be visually you saw a little depression of consciousness, so gently reduce your nitrous oxide concentration by maybe 5% or 10%. But if there is depression of consciousness like this, then definitely you need to reduce your concentration by 10 to 15% so as to bring back the child into minimal sedation. So it's very simple if we understand how we take care of the stage of sedation and what do we want to achieve using this particular gas. Okay, so the second part, we are through with the second part, that is nitrous oxide safe? So our take home message, I hope that all of you will be convinced now that yes, definitely nitrous oxide is safe, and its properties make it safe to be handled by dentist if used alone. If it is used alone, definitely there are no chances that there could be any problem related to this particular gas. Yes, there are minor adverse events which are associated with it, for example nausea or vomiting, headache, dizziness, but we must understand that there is no loss of consciousness, there is no depression of protective reflexes. Our protective reflexes are absolutely intact, therefore there are no chances of aspiration which could happen because of nitrous oxide gas. Very few cases or incidents have been reported in literature, but that is only related to your pediatric medical procedures. That means in emergency rooms where nitrous oxide is administered in a concentration which is very high through a closed mask, which is covering both nose and mask, and a very high concentration of 70% in a very small child. That means a child who is less than even 2.5 years old, for 1 year old, or even a child who's few months old. Only in those cases we have seen that there are some chances of some aspiration which has been reported. But if we make sure our concentration is not going beyond 50% for the entire duration of treatment, if we ensure that the age of the child is not too small, and if we ensure we are administering the gas by an open system, there are no chances of any major adverse events. In dentistry, no major adverse event has been reported. So coming on to the third part of our presentation, that is how do we administer it effectively. So when we start administering nitrous oxide, most of us feel, as I said earlier, that nitrous oxide may not work for all our patients. It's not a very effective technique. We will have to use some other sedative. So why do we get these kind of remarks? Because we have to understand how to use it. Nitrous oxide technique is not a simple technique to be administered to a child. Okay, if you want to administer this technique to an adult, it's simple. You tell them, okay, this is what I expect from you. I expect that you have to breathe through your nose. You have to keep your mouth closed, keep taking slow, deep breaths. If there's any problem, please raise your hand and talk to us. But in child, do you think you'll tell them, okay, we are going to put the mask? Is going to be that simple? No, especially for a child who's anxious, a child who has walked into your practice, he's already anxious, and on top of that, you introduce them to another new thing which they have not known, which they don't see, they have not seen. It's going to build up their anxiety. So how do you introduce nitrous oxide is very, very important, and that's where your role as a pediatric comes into picture. Your basic behavior management techniques or non-pharmacological techniques come into play, and that's why use of nitrous oxide is little different in pediatric patients as compared to adult patients. So if you are able to introduce it nicely, the first impression is the last impression. The first visit, how do you introduce it in the first visit? If you introduce it well, you will be able to ensure that the child accepts the mask, because that is the only challenge, that the child should be able to accept the nasal hood and let it be there on the nose throughout the procedure. If you're able to achieve that, this technique will definitely work well. So be confident, use your basic behavior management techniques, be well versed with the technique, what concentration, how much concentration, when to increase, when to decrease, and also train your assistants to assist you during this particular procedure. So what do I tell parents, or how do I introduce this technique to the parents? So we don't use the word sedation at all. As I said earlier, even AAPD doesn't call it sedation. If you go to the documents, go through that document, it is nitrous oxide. It's always mentioned as nitrous oxide. It is never mentioned as nitrous oxide inhalation sedation. It is just nitrous oxide. It's just one of the behavior guidance techniques. So I tell them, okay, in our practice, we use this technique of using laughing gas, wherein the purpose, see, you are introducing a new technique to the child. So you have to tell them, why do you want to introduce this technique to the child? Unless this is clear to the parents, they won't let you use that technique for their children, right? So tell them that I want to use this technique because I want to make this particular treatment very comfortable for the child. This gas helps in reducing anxiety, fear, also reduces pain sensation. So the entire process will be much comfortable for you, for your child. So that word comfortable is very important, because that is what most of the dentists are looking for. Sorry, most of the parents are looking for, and that is what is going to make you stand different from other dentists, if you ensure that the treatment which is being provided to their children is in a comfortable and relaxed manner. And another important point over here nowadays, which is very important, is you emphasize that you'll be able to do more amount of work in a shorter time, and it improves the quality of work, because nowadays everybody is so busy in their lives, they don't want to visit dentist again and again. So they want everything should be done in one go or as soon as possible with least number of visits. So that is also one important point or objective which has to be communicated well to the parents. So some parents may come up with query whether it is safe, is it an anesthetic, does it have any side effects? So all these questions you can answer well with confidence. That's very important, with confidence, if you know about this gas well, if you know about the properties of this gas, how it acts and how you administer it. Then in general, now which patients should I select for this particular gas, or are there any contraindications? So in general, in our dental practices, any patient who is coming with ASA 1 or ASA 2 category of patients, they are good patients or fit for being administered nitrous oxide. And usually, at least in private practices, we don't hardly get to see any patient who will be ASA 3. In case you do get to see such a patient, in that case, it's important to ensure to understand the medical history properly and have a consultation with the referring pediatrician or a cardiologist, or whatever is the problem with that particular child. So in general, there are no contraindications for no active contraindications for this particular technique. In general, this is what are the this is what do we have. We have enlisted all these things in our registration form so that we understand if any problem is there with the child, because certain simple things parents tend to miss and do not communicate with us. So it's better to have such a list ready so as to understand the medical history of the child properly. And if you see this table here, we see that there are absolute contraindications are just 3 and 4. Now out of these, recent eye surgery, recent ear surgery, bleomycin therapy, all these patients we may not be seeing in our practices. So as such, that's why I feel in general, if you feel that the child is fit, no major systemic disease in the child, then there are no contraindication. And asthma is definitely not a contraindication. This gas doesn't irritate the tracheobronchial tree. It is being administered along with oxygen, which is the first line of treatment for asthma. It is reducing anxiety, which again can provoke asthma. Therefore, it in fact is useful for patients who have some history of asthma. That means you will not be having an incidence of asthma being precipitated in your practices. So coming back to this article, if we see the thing which is highlighted here, that is behavior guidance is the process by which practitioners help patients identify appropriate and inappropriate behavior. That means it is introducing this particular technique is a process. As I said, it's not simple that you tell them, okay, please put the mask on your nose. It's an entire process. You need to communicate what are the objectives. You need to interact with the child, communicate with the child. And the first and foremost step is understand the anxiety in the child. If your child is anxious, you need to modify your way of introducing this particular technique, which I'll be talking about a little later. So coming on to first nitrous visit, we explain the parents, we demonstrate to the child, we use modeling on parents, you have to do tell, show, do for the child, audiovisual distraction, you choose an appropriately sized mask, because if you choose a mask which is larger in size, the gases are going to get wasted, it's going to come over, come down your over your upper lip, thereby interfering with your axis. Or if you have a smaller size mask, then it can cause claustrophobia. And so, and then you have to decide in which position you have to introduce the child, introduce this gas to the child. So if you're a child who is, if you have a child who is definitely positive or positive, you can introduce this particular technique in your normal position. That means either in the supine position on a dental chair or in a slightly reclined position. For a child with negative behavior, because the child is already anxious, you may introduce this technique on parents' lap, because that helps in giving little comfort to the child. And once the child has become calm and the anxiety has been reduced, then you can remove the child from the parents' lap and make the child sit independently on the chair. And for a definitely negative behavior, we'll have to stand. We can introduce this technique in a standing position, or maybe make the child sit uh, on the dental stool, or you have to go out to the reception, communicate, educate the child about the technique, that okay, let's go inside, we'll play a game, I want to check how strong you are. If you're very powerful, you'll be able to blow a balloon. And tell them, okay, let's play this game. There's nothing new, nothing related to dentistry which we are doing over here. And that way they might be able to come and accept the nasal hood. Now, this is a flow chart which tells us how do we proceed, or what is the entire process of introducing this technique. So as I said, first, for a definitely positive child, the first step would be to introduce technique to the parents. So we communicated with the parents. Then if the child is absolutely positive, we go ahead, examine the child, take radiographs, intraoral photographs. Then we tell the child, okay, we'll be using this particular technique. So we do tell show do technique for the child, tell them how they're supposed to breathe. We have put the mask on the nasal hood on the child's nose, and we positively reinforce that behavior. Okay, keep breathing well, you're doing very well, I can see that the balloon is becoming bigger in size. And you proceed with the titration. For a child, sorry, yeah, so for a child who has little bit of anxiety, you need to modify the steps slightly. Okay, so in that case, what you do is you gauge the level of anxiety in the child. So you have, when the child walks into your practice, you have gauged that okay, this child is not very confident, is not having a definitely positive behavior. So what you do is you first communicate with the child, you interact with the child. Okay, how are you doing, which school do you go to, what are your friends, okay, which is your favorite toy, okay, can we both play with the toy together. So something of that sort, you talk to the child and first of all reduce the anxiety, build rapport with the child. So that is your first step. Then you introduce the technique to the parents and examine the child using tell show do technique. That means even for examination, mouth mirror, make sure that you have to be very careful, very proactive while using your basic behavior management techniques. Okay, because anything which is not liked by the child will increase the level of anxiety. Once you have done that, then you do tell show do and modeling technique for nasal hood. Put the nasal hood positively reinforce and go ahead and do the titration. After this, you may take the radiographs and intraoral photographs. Why? Because nitrous oxide is anxiolytic as well as analgesic properties. So once you're taking photographs which is a little uncomfortable for the child, or you're taking radiographs, then it's better to do under nitrous oxide for a child, because this child has a little bit of anxiety initially. Okay, so if you did radiographs and photographs earlier, I mean before using nitrous oxide, then what is going to happen, the anxiety will increase, the child will say I don't want to breathe through the nose, and he'll get up and walk out of your practice. So it's better you understand what level of anxiety is there. Based on that, you have to decide whether I can do a complete examination, radiographs, photographs, and then introduce nitrous oxide, or first I introduce nitrous oxide and then do radiographs and photographs. For a child with a negative behavior, you don't even do an examination. So you first introduce the technique, then you do examination, and then take photographs. Okay, so that is how you need to modify your process or steps of introducing nitrous oxides and steps of doing examination and record keeping for on the first dental visit. So are there any preoperative instructions? Usually very simple: no running nose, to eating 2 hours prior to administration, something light, avoid fatty food because that may increase the chances of nausea or vomiting. Now, at what concentration the nitrous oxide has to be administered? There is no fixed concentration, because this particular gas is titrated. Titrated means the clinical effects are not based on the weight or the age of the child. There's no fixed dose which has to be given. It is purely dependent on clinical signs which you want to achieve. Okay, so based on that, we decide, okay, what concentration has to be used for this particular child. The concentration may be 30% or 40% or 50%. And during the procedure also, you may need to adjust those concentrations. Okay, so there is no fixed dose, no fixed concentration. It's purely dependent on the clinical signs and symptoms. The technique will be standard titration or rapid titration. Standard titration means you need to introduce or increase the concentration of nitrous oxide gradually, and rapid titration is you straight away give a high concentration of nitrous oxide. Why? Because you want to reduce that initial anxiety. Once the child becomes calm and relaxed, child is independently lying down in the dental chair, you can reduce the concentration of nitrous oxide and proceed with your procedure. So you have two important things over here. That is, you have to understand the flow rate and the concentration. Okay, so there is the tubes which you see on this photograph, the green and the blue ones, they are the flow meters. So it tells you at what rate the gases are being administered to the child. It is not telling you the concentration at all. So the ball floats are there at 3 in the blue one and between 2 and 3 in the green one, which means the total flow rate of gases which is being administered to the child is around 2.5 plus 3, that is 5.5 liters per minute. Okay, and the concentration which you see, that is the black knob which you see in this particular picture, in the center picture on the left hand side, it shows 20, 30, 40. So you're administering 30% nitrous oxide. So the concentration and the flow rate has to be adjusted. Okay, so flow rate for a child is usually determined by your reservoir bag. Your reservoir bag should be 2/3 filled. If it is overfilled, that means your flow rate is more. What is the disadvantage of a higher flow rate? Nothing actually. It's just that you're wasting your gases, and the gases get leaked into your operatory, and it may contaminate your operatory. That means your nitrous oxide levels are building up in your operatory. If the flow rate is lower, then the child may feel that enough gas is not coming, so the gas will be in your procedure will be ineffective because less gas is being administered to the child than what is desired. Okay, so reservoir bag being 2/3 fill is an indication how much gas has to be delivered to the child. So you adjust the flow rate, and concentration is purely governing your clinical symptoms, right? So reservoir bag, you check the flow rate, and concentration, you check the clinical signs. So two simple things which have to be done while you're administering it. So what is the optimal concentration? As I said, there is no optimal concentration. It may vary between 30 to 550%. You have to keep reassuring the child, inform them about the expected symptoms which they may experience. For procedures which are a little painful, for example, extraction or administration of local anesthesia, in such cases, you may use a higher concentration. That means what we usually do is when we want to administer local anesthesia, increase the concentration to 60%, and then after administration of local anesthesia, I bring it down to 40% or 35 or 45, whatever is desired for that particular child. Then when I want to extract, again, I may increase the concentration and extract. So why increasing concentration even for painful procedures is because we want to make use of that analgesic property. So if we have a higher concentration, we are making use of the analgesic property, thereby ensuring the child experiences less pain. And for simple procedures, for example, just fluoride application or restorations, even a lower concentration is okay, because here what we want to achieve is just anxiolysis and little bit of euphoria. Now, the next important question which arises, how do we know what is the right concentration for this particular, for my child? So as I said, you have to look for clinical signs, but again, the difference here between a child and an adult is you may not get those classical signs in a child. Okay, so whenever you feel that the child is little relaxed now, he is communicating with you well, or he's following your commands, you may feel that, okay, you are in the right concentration. Otherwise, you need to increase the concentration slightly and then check. Okay, so in general, you may feel that the child may start smiling, or the child who was very tensed initially would relax down, he may become more active, he may start talking to you, or the lower jaw may just drop down. Okay, so if the lower jaw just dropped down like this, that means the child is in the right plane. Or if the child is holding something, for example, a ball or a small car in his hand, it may just drop down from his hand, okay, because he loses the grip. So that is again an indication that, okay, you are at the right plane. Now, in some children who are very anxious or maybe having from some anxiety disorder, in those children, once they start getting the effects of that anxiolysis or euphoria, they may not understand and they may suddenly get up and begin to cry asking for their parents, okay. So that indicates that the anxiety level is very high for that particular child and he could not understand what happened to the child. They may feel that they're losing themselves, okay. So in such situations, you need to reassure, talk to the child, let them experience and understand. And that's why we say that initially it's always better to go in for slow titration so that you can keep telling and talking to the child, tell them, okay, this is what you may feel, okay. But if the anxiety level is very high, do rapid titration and then reduce the concentration, okay, after informing the parents. Now, this is a small table which talks about, which gives you some clues whether you're in the right concentration or not. For example, reduced activity of eyes is desired. That means there's a desirable level of sedation. That means your eyeball movement is reduced. Okay, it's not moving too much. The blink rate would have reduced. Okay, if there's increased activity of the eyes, that means the child is constantly seeing left and right, what is going on, who's coming, who's going, what instrument you're picking. That means the sedation level is too light. Okay, if the eyes are fixed, there is no eyeball movement at all, and the child is looking somewhere which you don't relate to, that means you don't know where the child is actually looking, that means the sedation level is too deep and you need to reduce the concentration of nitrous oxide. Similarly, arms, the position of arms and legs, patient talks too much, again the sedation is light, because when the communication is more, it may mean that the child is talking too much. But in children, it may also mean that the child is getting into that euphoria. That's why he begins to talk more. Okay, so you have to gauge each and everything. There's nothing fixed. Okay, it's not that you get the eye response, but you may not get the verbal response. So you can have a like a combination of various effects which you may get. So for how long can we administer nitrous oxide, or what can be the maximum duration of administration? So again, there is no maximum duration of administration. It is usually dependent on the clinical symptoms, which govern, clinical symptoms only govern the duration of treatment. As we proceed beyond 30 minutes, you may feel that the child may be going into a depression of consciousness. That means the eyelids are getting little drowsy. That means you can reduce your concentration at that moment. So just observe the clinical symptoms. Make sure that there is no depression of consciousness, and you can go on doing your treatment for an hour also. Now, I talked about rapid titration. I said it has to be used about when the child is child is very anxious. You can use a higher concentration. How do we use it? Actually, I think it may not be possible to discuss in detail over here. And then how do we increase the efficacy and potency of this particular gas? How do we make sure that whatever concentration is being administered, the child inhales the same amount of concentration? So there should be no nasal congestion, because if you have nasal congestion, means the child is not inhaling the gas which is being administered. Thereby the alveolus will have less amount of gas, hence lesser effect. Avoid mouth breathing, again same reason. Ensure tight fit of nasal hood. No leakage means the gas is going more into the alveolus. Slow breaths, take deep slow breaths. Why do we say slow breaths? Is because whenever we are ventilating, we have some dead spaces. So when we say slow, deep slow breaths, means we are making use of those dead spaces also. Thereby we are increasing the chances of alveolar exchange which is taking place between the lungs and the blood vessels. So initially, whenever we start administering, we always still keep taking deep slow breaths, close your mouth, breathe through your nose, and that will help in getting that effect faster. Avoid talking unnecessary conversations. Just do conversations in which the child needs to nod his head or raise his hand. Keep the mouth closed when you're not working. Use rubber dam. That is most important, because when you use rubber dam, you're able to seal the mouth. You ensure that the mask is snugly fitting on the nose, because it exerts little pressure on the nasal hood also, and therefore whatever amount of gas which you're administering, almost the amount of gas will be delivered to the child. Because it never happens that suppose you are putting, you have set the concentration to 50%, and if you check the concentration in lungs, it will not be 50%, it may be just 30% or 25%, because gas tends to leak from various places. You are maybe having mouth breathing, the mask is loosely fitting. So because of all those reasons, the concentration is reducing. Okay, so to ensure that the optimal concentration for better efficacy, we have to make use of rubber dam. So I think I've covered the third part, that is how to administer it effectively. In short, I have talked about it. It's a more detailed description, because we need to see how do we introduce for negative children, how do we gauge anxiety. So I'm sorry, but I cannot cover all of that in this particular webinar. Now, coming on to the last part, that is what do we look for during administration. So during administration, you have to do something which is known as monitoring. Okay, that means you have to ensure that the child is in the desired level of sedation. That is the objective of monitoring during nitrous oxide procedure. Now, how do we do that? I had discussed with you earlier. Very simple, just two things. Visually monitor the child. That means visually check for depression of consciousness. Visually look for signs of oversedation, which I'll be talking about. Visually see the movement of reservoir bag. That means the child is breathing through the nose, not breathing through mouth, and the respiration is there. And visually, so in nutshell, visually determine the level of consciousness. Okay, so that is one part. The second part is you have to communicate with the child responsiveness to your verbal commands. Okay, so visually examine for depression of consciousness and the response of the child to verbal commands. If you're able to do these two things during your procedure intermittently, you are doing good. There will be no chance of any minor events also. So that is what is the purpose of monitoring. That means determine the level of sedation. If it feel that there is depression of consciousness, going into moderate sedation, reduce your concentration of nitrous oxide slightly. Okay, and promptly recognize any deviation from normal. For example, if a child is breathing and you feel that suddenly there are some respiratory movements, or you see some abdominal movements, okay, or the child begins to cough. So anything which is being deviated from normal, okay, means there is some problem which is happening. So you need to, what you need to do is check for consciousness and communicate with the child. Establish communication with the child. These are the two things which you need to do. That's it. If you do that, you'll be able to understand what is happening and you can take care of the entire process. So I think we have seen this. So what are the signs of oversedation? Signs of oversedation will be fixed eyes, as I said, no movement of eyeballs, flushing of face. You may feel that the face is almost like red in color. They may be sweating, not on the forehead, but in the scalp. Okay, I always tell my assistants to keep looking for any sweating in the scalp, and abnormal breathing pattern. As I said, if you notice any of these things, that means the child is getting oversedated. You need to reduce the concentration of nitrous oxide. That is the first step. Second step will be establish communication with the child. Are you okay? How are you feeling? And keep your suction ready in case the child is feeling nausea, is developing nausea, or is about to vomit. Okay, so that's how you proceed. Again, this is I've discussed this part, monitoring part, also in short because of paucity of time. So what are the post-operative instructions? Nitrous oxide sedation doesn't seem to impair the ability to perform higher cognitive tasks. Therefore, the best part of this particular technique is child can do anything and everything immediately after the procedure. Okay, so only thing which you need to do is you just ask the child, okay, how are you feeling? Did you enjoy? Would you like to come back? Are you feeling dizzy? Is your head hurting? So you're just checking for those minor adverse events. If you just verbally ask those minor adverse events and inform the parents, if the child feels any of these things, please don't worry. These are all self-resolving problems which may which will just subside over a period of time, and you may contact us. Okay. In the operatory, if you see any of these signs, administer oxygen for 5 to 7 minutes, and that's it. And the child will be good to go. So that brings me back to the end of my presentation. I hope whatever objectives I had enlisted in my first slide, I've been able to achieve those objectives. If yes, then I think I have done a good webinar management, something like a behavior management. That means the means by which I have effectively, that means you have understood each and everything, and efficiently, that means in the amount of time which was given to me, I've imparted information to instill a positive nitrous attitude. That means all of us will be encouraged to use and incorporate this technique in our practices, and not, and even after incorporation, not restrict its use to only few patients, because we must understand, if we see a child who's anxious, we talk to the child, we examine the child, and then we say, okay, let's introduce nitrous oxide. The child is not cooperative. Do you think the child is going to put the mask on the nose? No, there is already anxious. The environment is same, person is same, everything is same. You will not be able to gain that cooperation from the child. Okay, so it's very important. We must understand its objective. We must gauge the level of anxiety, understand the behavior of the child, and then use this technique, try and use this technique for all our patients, because then only we'll be able to feel that, okay, we are making optimum use of this particular technique. Thank you so much. For more details, you may go through this book, and I hope you'll like it when you read through it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, SAAPD team, Dr. Gyanin, for giving me this opportunity to interact with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kunal. Can we take some questions if you have time?
Sure. Yes, sure, please.
I'll just take one or two. Dr. Abhishek Soni wants to know any protocol regarding the nitrous oxide during this endemic season.
Yes, there are certain protocols. In fact, let me share it very briefly. Now, when we talk about this pandemic period, there are two things which have to be taken into consideration. That is, how do we manage our equipment? Okay, and second is how we introduce the technique to the child. Okay, because our main concern is contamination with saliva, which can be through speaking, through coughing, through sneezing, and even through breathing. Okay, now as far as so let me come on to the first part, that is contamination of equipment. Now, our equipment has been designed in such a way that it has valves that it prevents any mixing of inspired and expired air. So whatever inspired air is coming, it will never get contaminated. So our internal lining of our tubings is always free of contamination. But our the parts of the equipment which we are touching by hands, for example, our nasal hood, or the tubes attached to that nasal hood, the scavenging cone, those have to be considered as parts which can have high level of contamination, and we need to autoclave them nicely. Other parts, we need to either line them with some cling wrap or cover them with some plastic wrappers, so that any saliva which is being there, or any contamination with saliva doesn't happen. So that is about equipment. About introducing this technique, we have to not tell the child to take deep, slow breaths, because whenever we take the child to take deep, slow breaths, there will be, when the child expires, there will be some fluid that is present, the mucus which is present in the respiratory tract may come out through our breath. Okay, so that may contaminate the surroundings of our environment. So avoid doing that. Introduce the technique from the back of the patient, not in front of the patient, because when we introduce the technique from the front, sometimes the child may not like the smell, or the flow rate is too high. Again, it will increase chances of some coughing. So there will be chances of contamination. So these are simple steps which have to be taken into consideration while we are practicing during this particular time. But yes, it can be used, and it should be used, because if we see a child who is not so cooperative, even simple procedures like SDF application, child is not cooperating, we are increasing the chances of salivary contamination. The child may be spitting, child may be coughing. So to reduce all that, we should use this technique with certain precautions and considerations.
Dr. Deval Arora asked 3 or 4 questions, but it's too lengthy. So if Dr. Deval Arora is here, I'll unmute him. They will ask directly to you. 3 questions and 4 or 5 lines of questions. That is not feasible to read out. Dr. Deval? Dr. Deval?
Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah. Dr. Deval. Whenever you ask question, briefly ask question. You have asked 3 or 4 questions, say very lengthy. So
Yes,
we are
sir.
not able. And just ask directly to Dr.
Right,
Kunal.
sir. Right, sir. Sir, first of all, very good afternoon, and thank you for a very nice and a very informative presentation on nitrous, sir. Sir, I have a few questions and doubts which I needed to clarify. One of which is key: if we take an informed consent, should we take an informed consent from the parents before doing nitrous? And if so, like when we are counseling the patient and telling them that it is a safe procedure, and ultimately when we are saying that you sign an informed consent form, that brings a lot of doubt in the parent's mind. So how to combat that situation? And do we tell the parents that there is a risk of diffusion hypoxia and explain it to them that there is a risk of diffusion hypoxia when we are taking the informed consent or not?
Okay. A very valid point. Informed consent has to be taken, and we must understand what are the parts of informed consent. When we talk about parts of informed consent, is we have to write down the objectives of using that particular technique. What are the risks and benefits of using that particular technique, and what are the other options? Or if we don't use technique, what do we do? Objectives I've already enlisted, so you have explained the objective to the parents, so same has to be mentioned there. About the risks, you have to mention that there are minor adverse events which can happen, which are self-limiting, they get resolved on their own. Okay. And what are the benefits? Again, you have to enlist those, so the parents have to understand, okay, there could be minor issues, but again, it is the chances of that is very remote, that is only in 3 to 5% maximum, 5% of the times. And even if it happens, it can be managed, it is self-limiting, there is nothing major about it. As far as diffusion hypoxia is concerned, again, it is clinically, it is not a very relevant situation. I mean, what happens is if you suddenly remove stop nitrous oxide and start giving oxygen, because of one property of nitrous oxide, that is um, the way it replaces nitrogen gas from, or I would say the same property of rapid recovery and rapid onset, there can be some decrease in oxygen content in the alveolus and the blood vessels. So it gets resolved on its own. I mean, even if you don't administer oxygen to the child, okay, what is going to happen? You ask the child to be on the chair for 5 minutes, he will not feel dizziness. Maximum what happens is you may feel dizzy, but there will be no unconsciousness after that. Okay, so diffusion hypoxia is more of theoretical rather than of clinical significance in our practices.
Right.
I hope
Thank
I'm
you
able
so
to
much, sir.
solve your, but still, if you have
Yes,
doubts,
right.
please feel free to contact me.
Yes, sir. And so just two or three clinical scenarios, like you stated that it is not contraindicated in cases of asthma. So, but if we do administer nitrous and the patient does go into some sort of the asthma exacerbates, so is there any clinical tip to combat that particular situation? And the second part of the question is, sir, is there any particular clinical tips to administer it to mouth breathers? And for COVID-19 patients, is it contraindicated, indicated? Any tips on that, sir?
Okay, so first part of question was related to asthma. Okay, so as I said, it is very rare that nitrous oxide will precipitate asthma. Okay, so nitrous oxide will never precipitate asthma. On some severe patients, if even if it does precipitate, in your medical history, if you feel that the parents have mentioned that and you ask about it, how severe, when was the last attack, and then in those cases, if it is happening very frequently, if the child is severely asthmatic, you can ensure that the mother is always carrying those inhalers with them when they are coming into their practice. Okay, and any which ways, whenever any asthmatic attack happens, what happens? What is the first line of treatment? We have to administer 100% oxygen to the child, okay, to any patient. So immediately reduce your concentration of nitrous oxide and administer 100% oxygen. Make use of those inhalers, and the child should be fine. The second part of your question was related to mouth breathing. Now, for mouth
Sir,
breathers, again, the efficacy will be reduced. Okay, it's not that it is contraindicated. It's not that if you use for mouth breathers, something is going to go wrong. It's just that the efficacy of nitrous oxide will not be there. So, if you want to do some procedures, so you have to first of all try and see what is the cause for mouth breathing. If it's an obstructive cause, you can't help it. You won't be able to use this particular technique. But if it's just a habit, what happens is because of reduction in anxiety over a period of time, the child tends to start breathing through nose. So what I usually do is I use a larger size mask, put it on nose and mouth both, so that it covers both nose and mouth. Let the child breathe through mouth. Once the child has taken enough breaths through mouth and that anxiety has reduced, I quickly change the mask to a small side mask and then continue with the procedure. So that's how I manage mouth breathers. Then and then we use rubber dam definitely if we are able to see that the child is able to breathe well through nose. Then the third part was COVID-19. I think I've already talked about it. Dr. Abhishek had asked, so I had discussed about that. But there are a few more aspects to it. If you want to know that, please get in touch with me. I'll surely share that with you. Okay. And
Right. Thank you
anyways,
so much.
whatever patients will be coming in our practice, we have to take adequate medical history. No respiratory symptoms should be there. So at most, we'll presume those children to be carriers, but not active or patients with acute COVID-19, acute symptoms.
Duly noted, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Dr. Rohan, are you able to hear us? Dr. Rohan, postgraduate student from BGS Dental College, Ludhiana. Hello. I think Rohan is not ready or not able to listen us. Dr. Rohan.
Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah. Please ask to Dr. Kunal.
Hello. Yes, sir. Sir, I very nicely compiled and summed up the whole seminar in such a short duration. So my question is that if we have a patient with acute pain and it's his first dental visit with us, so are we supposed to use nitrous oxide there and then prior to his desensitization to all the setup?
So as you said, the child has acute pain. That means the anxiety level could already be high. Okay. So please gauge the anxiety level of the child. If you feel that you're able to talk to the child, so anxiety is already present, so communicate well with the child. You have to spend 5 minutes talking to the child, building rapport with the child. Introduce the technique in a very friendly manner. Okay, let's play some game. Maybe by this game your pain will reduce. Okay, I'm there to help you. Okay, we are not going to check your teeth today. Okay, we'll just play this game and let you go back home. I'm going to prescribe you some medicine and you go back home. So let's just check how strong you are, because if you're strong enough, I think the germs which are bothering you, which are causing you pain, are going to run away. Okay, so let's play this game. Introduce the technique to the child in standing position using rapid titration. Once the child calms down, the child is absolutely relaxed, make the child sit on the chair, and then you assess if you feel the child is confident enough to go ahead with the procedure. For example, you do an examination, you take radiographs. If the child is absolutely comfortable, you can do some emergency procedure on that day. Otherwise, you may proceed on the next visit.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Dr. Lee wants to know, what do you do if the nitrous oxide doesn't work? Schedule patient under general anesthesia? Is it? Or how do you tell parents that the nitrous oxide doesn't work?
So if nitrous oxide doesn't work, then we, for example, on the visit when we're introducing nitrous oxide, I feel that after introducing nitrous oxide, the anxiety hasn't reduced. I am trying to examine the child is not calming down. There is maybe gag reflex. Child is not allowing me to take intraoral pictures. So I gauge that, okay, the nitrous oxide is not so effective. I've tried at different concentrations also. So in such situations, I will feel that, okay, I need to, something else has to be done for this child. So I abandon that and then I plan for some other sedative. That is, I move on to the next step, that is oral sedation. So I usually go stepwise. That is, if nitrous oxide is not working, then I do oral sedation. If that is also not working, then only I plan the procedure under general anesthesia, because I feel that way the parents also get convinced for general anesthesia, because convincing them for general anesthesia for a child who's greater than 3 years old is not so easy. So when we know the child is less than 3 years old, we have no choice. Straight away we can recommend, but for other children we have to go stepwise so as to convince the parents.
Thank you, Dr. Kunal. That's it. There are a lot of questions, but not able to ask due to the shortage of time. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation, and have a good day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks.